I molested my best friend. Trigger warning / molestation, gay, manipulation, self-harm. Hi, I'm new to Reddit, and I just have a confession to make. It all happened fairly recently, last 2 years, and it's been bugging me ever since. To start things off, me, 16 male, and my ex-best friend, 19 male, really had a strong connection with each other. But after this incident, we never talked to each other again. We were fairly young when it happened, 14 and 17. We were classmates and I noticed that he was always quiet during class. He was always sad and it always seems like he's overthinking all the time. Since his birthday was coming soon, I thought he could use a friend. I approached him first, and he was just the sweetest little bean you can think of. It wasn't evident at first, since he was 170 mission height. I'm 150 centimeters. Odd genetics, am I right? I started hanging out with him. We would eat lunch together, and we would go home together, help each other with our homeworks and things like that. I got to see him improve more and more every day. As a supportive friend, I was happy to see him smile more often. He also started talking with my other classmates as well. He was getting more social, and I always felt proud of him for overcoming his peers. But he always had a not so good side. He always gets sad when things go far from what he wanted. I remember not agreeing to eat with him one time, since I wasn't feeling really well and therefore didn't have the appetite. He rambled that maybe I was getting tired of him, and that it was a sign that I'd eventually leave him, and other things, like he was better off dead if I was just gonna ignore him. I didn't want to make him feel that way. His mental health was in shambles when I met him, and I got to see him improve already. I didn't want all of that development to go to waste. I found myself agreeing to everything he says after that. It started with small and petty things like eating lunch with him, seating beside him, and stuff like that, until it progressed to more irrational things like distancing myself with my other friends because it somehow made him feel weird. If he scores low on a test, I'm obligately must botch my own, since he didn't want to risk us getting separated in different sections. He was getting really unreasonable, and I can't really muster up the courage to stand up against him, since I'm worried that he might commit suicide. It all got to the point where my world was only revolving around him. My friends started asking why I started avoiding them. I don't want them to think badly of my best friend. It would take a serious toll on his mental health, so I just bluffed my way through them. As for my best friend, he went from really shy to really sociable and likable. And I thought to myself that if that's what makes him happy, then I'm happy as well. I forgot to mention that I was the top of our class, so botching my exams really hurt my grades and I almost got kicked out from my spot. My parents were ready to disown me FFFFF, so I finally decided to confront my best friend about it. I asked him that I didn't want us to fail that school year and I'd be happy to tutor him instead of purposely doing less on tests. He went silent for a bit. I got really scared at that time. Then he looked at me and smirked. He agreed to it. It was fine if I tutor him, as long as it was in his house. Being a fairly oblivious kid, I was really excited. I prepared learning materials beforehand, and even studied lessons harder to make him understand the topics easier. We got to his house and there was no one inside. I kinda understood now why he was an outcast before. We went to his bedroom and at first I was surprised when he locked the door, but I paid no mind to it. I started to bring out my study materials. As I started talking and teaching him, he was staring at me. Yet when I questioned him about the topic, it's almost like he wasn't paying any attention. It made me really uncomfortable, and I just want to free myself from that situation. Then I noticed that he started rubbing his crotch area. I asked him what was he doing, and he said that something was itchy and asked me if I can help him scratch it. I was in a state of panic. I know what he was thinking. There was an awkward atmosphere around the room, so I just wanted to get it finished. I scratched his crotch. He held my wrist strongly and stroked it up and down. I didn't know what to do. I really don't. Then he stopped. I asked if I can go home now, and he pulled me and pinned me on his bed. He laid himself flat all over me. We still had clothes on. I felt his erect private part was rubbing against mine. I was so scared at that time. He was so heavy. He kept moving and rubbing until he finished. He said sorry afterwards and that it was my fault since I was the one who touched him first. Which is kinda true. I went home and I didn't know what to feel afterwards. I already lost all of my friends I can talk to. I kept blaming myself for putting myself in that situation. Things went worse from that point on. He started to ask me to rub his dick in public. He made me sit on his lap in public and he would rub his dick on my butt. He taught me sexting so that we could do it whenever he pleases. And whenever I refused to him, he would always send me pictures of him cutting himself and threaten me that he would tell everyone that I molested him on his suicide note. I couldn't bear the fact of being known as a creepy pervert that drove someone to commit suicide. So I just complied to everything he said. It went like that for about half a year until our school break came. It was a relief for me. Me and my best friend still talk to each other online though. He still made me do weird things, but it wasn't as horrible as when we were seeing each other physically. Then the worst thing that happened to my life came. My parents had a divorce and me and my siblings stayed with our mom. Having no money, we sold almost every single thing of our possession, including our phones. I explained to my best friend what was happening and that we might stop talking to each other for a while from now on, but he wouldn't believe me. Fast forward to end of school break. I was excited to see him, but he was absent on the first day. I felt weird since all of my classmates started to avoid me until one of them finally said that my best friend told everyone that I molested him. He even gave evidence to everyone, which was just cropped photos of us sexting to make me look bad. I was shocked why he would do that. Even though I complied with everything he said, I was angry. I was scared. I don't know what I was feeling back then, but it was strong. I tried defending myself but no one would believe me. He had more influence on other people than me. I had no one to talk to. My own best friend betrayed me. I withdrew myself from others since then. I stopped talking to him and to others as well. Up to this day, I still get panic attacks from remembering all of that. I even had a few while typing this, and I figured that maybe I just needed to get this out of my chest. I know, this is just a poor excuse for people to sympathize with me, but that's not it. I just want someone to listen to my side of the story, since no one is willing to do so. I'm so desperate for a listener that I even downloaded Reddit and speak to random people. Yes, I know it is all entirely my fault, and that I'm disgusting, that I'm a horrible friend for molesting my own best friend. I'm sorry. I really am. I put myself into this situation and I have no one to blame except for myself. I really want to kill my mother. I hate her. She is an overly emotional, manipulative piece of shit. I can't stand the sight of her voice and her pathetic existence. She has never cared for my emotions or who I'm as a person. For instance, if I were to tell her I'm not religious or I might be, she would kick me out of the house. Every fucking time I say I'm depressed, I need medication, a therapist, she just tells me to pray and God will heal me. This stupidity has honestly made me more hostile towards religious people. I know it's not right though, and I'm trying to fix it. Whenever I have a problem she brushes it off, but when she has one it's like the world is ending, and she's so damn dramatic. Overly emotional who can't have a philosophical or logical argument, because she'll end up crying. I've tried to stop engaging with her. I don't hug her. I don't say hi. Basically I don't acknowledge her existence unless it's something important. But guess what, even that doesn't work, because then I end up with the silent treatment, where I'm forced to apologize. I've had thoughts of slitting her throat, setting her on fire and all, while laughing hysterically doing it. I'd just love to see her in pain. I'm still a teen, and I'm trying my best to save up money so I can move out in 2 years. Hopefully I can bear this burden before I do something horrid. I lied and told someone very close to me I tried to commit suicide. Although these last few years I have had suicidal thoughts, I never once tried to attempt it. But that day, it was late at night. I was so tired and hurt and felt very much so alone. I wanted attention. I wanted to be seen in ways I don't get seen at home. I had already told this guy so much about me, and I knew he would respond with the kindest words in return. I know it was wrong to take advantage of his kindness. I know. Yet I did, and I know I can't use my loneliness or depression to avoid taking responsibility for lying about such a serious thing. And now I truly don't know how I feel about it. Honestly, I don't regret what I did. I achieved what I wanted, however the guilt still lives on, and I can't see a world in which I didn't do it. I had an affair with my friend's mom. I was on vacation with their family and her husband didn't go on the trip and I ended up sleeping with her several times. She initiated the affair, and I was young and frankly wasn't thinking all the way, and went along with it. They didn't end up getting a divorce, but I've felt guilty about it ever since it happened. Throughout the affair, there was a sense of excitement surrounding it as it was something new to my life. However, now that I'm older, it feels so wrong to have done that. I'm still in love with my ex. We broke up about 4 years ago. I'm in my 20s. I met my ex in middle school, and we dated through my sophomore year of high school. I won't get into the details, but the relationship wasn't perfect. We were kids when we met, and just teenagers through the latter half. However, she was the first girl I ever had strong feelings for. I also, to this day, think she was the most beautiful girl I've ever met. I guess to the majority of the world she wouldn't be particularly stunning, but there's something about her that makes all other women I've ever met seem unattractive in comparison. That has impacted my life in strange ways that I'll get into in a bit. She had a really great and generally warm personality that was infectious to all around her. We shared many of the same interests, and our relationship felt very natural despite some of our ups and downs. However, she and I had a rough breakup in our late teens, and she has currently cut off, basically, all forms of communication with me for the last year or so. Previously hadn't spoken in about a year and a half. Our last interaction was polite and kindly, but she informed me that she felt the need to keep me away from her life, and that we might one day be friends. The problem is that I think about her every single day. My mind somehow constantly finds a way to tie things in my daily life back to her. I can't help it. The worst part of this situation is that I currently have a girlfriend with whom I have a very comfortable relationship with. I can see myself marrying her and having a good life with her, but my mind somehow still focuses on that ex. I can tell that my emotional attachment to my current girlfriend is not absolutely all it could be because of this. Due to most women not being attractive to me if they don't look like my ex, I also don't really find my current girlfriend all that attractive. I obviously would never express any of this to her, though I have considered it, but it is something I have to deal with. I would give anything to have my ex in my life, just to talk to and keep up with as friends, while maintaining my current relationship. I don't really know what to do with these thoughts and feelings. I don't know if I'm emotionally immature for being obsessed with an ex that I haven't spoken to in a year and haven't dated in 4 years. I don't know if I should talk to my partner about this. CW for child abuse. I was molested in a swimming pool and I never told anyone. When I was about 9, I went on an excursion to a pool with my peers. I'm trying not to be too specific for obvious reasons, so I'm sorry if that sounds too ambiguous. Anyway, I was swimming in the public pool when, without going into too much detail, a man's DNA ended up on me. I began cleaning it off as I waded back to the adults in charge. Upon my arrival, I was told that a predator was around and that we needed to leave, which we did. None of the adults ever spoke to me personally about the incident, and they were reluctant to give much information to me. It was obvious that they didn't know what happened to me. As a child, I drew the conclusion that something had happened to one of the other children, and that was the incident which was causing all of the commotion. Or that maybe they did know what happened to me, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, and that I should just move on and forget about it. Most of me didn't understand it, so I pushed it down and forgot about it for years. Although now, I have a paralyzing fear of large bodies of water and the creatures inside them wrapping themselves around me and not letting me go. I have nightmares. Does anyone have an opinion on what I should do? Should I speak to a therapist about it, or should I continue to bury it? Is it just not a big deal? I deliberately left someone I got pregnant as a teenager. 16 years later the kid shows up at my work. I don't know how to start. I don't have the guts to say this on my real account. I was 15 and a very stupid kid when I left home because I was sick of being told what to do. I was drinking, partying, smoking, you name it. I had run away from home and stayed in this multi-house with 7 other people. It was a pretty disgusting house, but it was free. I had met this beautiful girl named Ella, not her real name, who was a friend of one of the roommates, and we hit it off instantly. We were both in the same crowd and just a bunch of troublemakers. I was dating her for about 7 months when she said she was pregnant. I was such an idiot. We never used protection. I lashed out and demanded that she get an abortion. We were both so poor and got into a huge fight over it. In our last conversation, I gave her a bottle of Advil and told her to take it so that she could miscarry. Eventually I got off the streets a couple months after this, when I was 17, and returned to my parents' house. I eventually graduated and went to college. I had always assumed that Ella never had the baby and that she took the pills. I was very harsh, but she didn't want the baby as well. I met my wife 6 years ago and we are married with 2 kids, 3 and 1. I never thought I could have had this life, like ever. I hadn't thought about the kid for a long time until my wife was pregnant for the first time. I had thought about it a lot. My thoughts were really about how life could been so different and how I can't believe I could have had a kid at 16 to 17. I never told anyone about this other than a friend during my rebellious days. My parents, siblings, nor my wife knew. No one. I work in a marketing office. Interns or people coming in to get information aren't unusual things. In my position, people come in to sell me their prototype so that I could sell it to bigger companies. Usually people make appointments with me, especially during COVID, but there are a few that I allow to see their product. A coworker comes in and tells me that someone was there for me and I didn't have any appointments for that day, so I told them to come in. Guy comes in and he's wearing a huge jacket, shades, and a mask, so I could barely see him. His clothes were all torn and huge. He was really silent and I was a bit on edge, so I left the door open. He was still for quite a while. Then he brought out one of those toothpick marshmallow projects and I was so confused. I started asking him questions about the model because I didn't want to be rude, but he was giving me very minimal answers. I observed the model hoping he would leave before time was up. Unscheduled prototypes get a 25-minute timer and sat there in silence for more than 5 minutes. At around the 15-minute mark, I tried to cut it short and that's when he said my name and asked if it was me, and I said yay, that's my name. He started asking me if I ever lived here and knew an Ella, and again I said yes. I was extremely uncomfortable, but time still wasn't up and I had no idea who he was. Then he took off his jacket, his shades and his mask, and I was about to tell him to put on the mask and leave. I took a good look at his face and he looked a hell of a lot like me. My mind wasn't really going to okay, this is my kid. I told him to put his mask back on and he asked if I ever had a kid with Ella back in 2004, and that's when I kinda just knew and figured it out. I had gone to shut the door and it was basically confirmed that the child was born. I was really trying to make sense of it. Sitting in front of me was a son that I never met. It turned out Ella had never gotten out of the streets. The both of them were very poor and she was an addict. She would disappear for days at a time and wasn't very attentive. He was a very quiet guy. If I asked him a question he would respond with 1 to 2 words. He had his walls up and wasn't interested in talking. I asked him what made him want to come see me and he was honest and said he just needed money. So I gave him $300 and took him out to eat. It was like he hadn't eaten in ages. The whole time I couldn't help but stare at him cause it was so unreal. I felt horrible, but I didn't know what to do. He only wanted one thing. I wanted to drop him off home because it was dark and 50 minutes back to where he lived by bus, but he decided to take another route. I feel so uneasy, like I want to throw up, but I can't, and I just want to be honest. I've been debating whether to tell my family or if I should go down there to help him or get to know him better. This kid was broken. He had bruises all over his hand and looked so empty. This is the first time I've ever told the full story. I feel a bit at ease, but this is something that has been constantly on my mind. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. It would really make my day. Have a nice day.